Okay, the regular meeting of the Governing Board of Education is called to order by Dr. Joseph Komorowski at 5 p.m. on Tuesday, June 27, 2023 at the District Office Conference Center. Approval of the agenda. Are there any requests for changes to the agenda? I'll take a motion and a second to approve the agenda.
I have a change.
Oh, yeah.
Okay,
Go ahead, Danny.
Mr. Gonzalez?
I'd like to pull action item number 2. We can talk about it if you guys want to.
Action or consent?
Action. This was the California Studies kindergarten curriculum.
Okay, California Studies Weekly Kindergarten, that one?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd like to pull it if you, yeah, if you want, I can kind of explain where this is coming from. So we went through this, I kind of found a similar issue on the last board meeting. It was related to something that's already come before the board for a vote that was voted against. And because of our governing handbook, Robert's Rules of Order that we use to govern meetings, we cannot put something back on the meeting agenda unless it's made a motion by one of the prevailing votes. So I know that we're working on this. I also know that we're making really good progress towards potentially bringing these back. But in my estimation, nothing has changed since this was voted on at the last time. And I'm also not aware of any motion or second that was made in order to put this back on the agenda. So for that reason, I think we should pull it, table this. Let's hear the information for tonight. And then let's figure out if we can bring this back to maybe the next board meeting.
And I mean, I can speak to that a little bit, and probably Jen can too, that we met in subcommittee, and the subcommittee, which consisted of myself and Jen, agreed to put it back on the agenda. So, I mean, it would really be Jen.
There was no motion made and there was no second.
So I
to put that back on the agenda.
I'll weigh in on this too because I called legal and Mr. Huff said that it could be put back on because a prevailing member voting against, which was Jen, she was on the subcommittee that gave the approval to have it uploaded. So just to let you know, that's cleared. But I might be with you to push it off because it was 2 subcommittees formed. One engaged, one didn't. So
yeah,
well,
which is also
only one was to review the social science curriculum,
correct,
which is what we did.
And what we had talked about at the last board meeting was that was 2-part. One subcommittee was going to actually look into the curriculum and other maybe options, supplemental materials, but there was another subcommittee that was formed around the curriculum adoption process and actually reviewing the administrative regulation, the 6141 that we use as a playbook for how we're going to adopt curriculum and what we're going to require during the curriculum adoption process. It's my hope that we can do an abbreviated version of that and make people feel comfortable with this curriculum adoption while we go through that, but we haven't even met in that committee yet, and literally nothing has changed from when this was voted against. There has been no further communication with the public. There has been nothing has happened that is different.
It has, because we formed the subcommittee, we had meetings, and like Joe said, Jen was on the subcommittee that approved putting back on the agenda.
Okay.
So that's why I think we should leave it on the agenda. We can discuss, voting on it at that time, but I think that legal has cleared it to be on the agenda, so.
Okay. Well, I disagree, and I'd like to pull it and table it for the next meeting. So that's why I brought it up.
Okay.
And we can see if we have a consensus or not.
okay, so let me add something in. Mr. Gonzalez, we haven't engaged on our subcommittee for the more broad issue. I am going on vacation, I don't know, 3 or 4 days after this for about a week and a half, but I will be available. Would you like to engage during that time if it gets pulled?
I would absolutely,
because I'd like to expedite it.
I've honestly, I've been very impressed with Dr. Velez and the attention that she's paid. We haven't had the opportunity to get together and sit down and have those meetings. This one, I believe, is going to be a lot more simple for us to go through and engage and make sure that we have that feedback and we've assessed any of the concerns that we have. It'll be a lot quicker process. So I think that we can bring it back at the next meeting.
All right, Mr. Schwartz wants to weigh in. Okay.
Oh, sorry. I would just say, once again, time is of the essence. The next board meeting is not until the end of July. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how that will be possible to get all the work done before the beginning of the school year to have the curriculum ready to go. And I think that was the concern of the subcommittee, that because there weren't concerns brought forth about that kindergarten curriculum, that everyone felt comfortable moving that one forward and then continuing this discussions on the 1st through 5th. So, and that's what.
Okay, I did bring up some concerns, but yeah, what has happened, and we're at this point, I completely understand. We need to work through that. I would just like a few more weeks to be able to sit down and have those meetings with Ms. Parla, with Ms. Velez, go through, answer some of the questions that I've received from concerned parents, and then discuss how we're going to address moving forward curriculum adoption.
Okay, let's let Mr. Schwartz weigh in, and then I'll weigh in to both of you as well.
I'm concerned that we keep postponing stuff that is really routine. This curriculum has been approved by the state. We have X number of curricula to select from them. I don't know, Mrs. Velez, how many kindergarten curricula are approved by the state, if you know?
So in my recollection, we have a total of 4 that cover TK5, and kindergarten obviously is one of them.
Okay, and this particular one is approved by the state?
Because studies, yes, Studies Weekly is approved by the state.
Well, then I think we should vote on it, vote it up or down. I feel disquieted to keep postponing stuff and pushing them off and pushing them off. The next meeting is the end of July. School will be starting in a month or so. We need to get the materials into the hands of the teachers. So I would say we need to get this on the agenda and either vote it up or down.
If you don't mind, just really quick, just as a response to that though, Mr. Schwartz, I think it does a bigger disservice to the community to put this back on the agenda, to relitigate this whole thing just for the same result. I think we're really close to having wide board support for this particular curriculum. With a little bit more time, I think we can get there. I think we're going to do a disservice by stirring this pot more, by bringing it up and having it potentially get voted down again.
Well,
So-
Mr. Gonzalez, let's say we get, well, I'll second your motion to suspend this. However, let's say we don't get the votes and it gets put on. Are you committing to engage with me on this subcommittee so that by July 18th, this is on?
Absolutely, yeah.
So then I'll second your motion, and then if this doesn't go through, then we'll go and do the second motion to vote it in, okay? But since he has a motion on the floor and I seconded it, let's all in favor.
Can I
to
ask a question
yeah,
first?
Yeah, absolutely.
I haven't had a chance to weigh in.
Oh, there you go.
So we did meet and formed this subcommittee and spent the time to do that. So I think my question for Dr. Velez is, knowing we're getting information for 1st through 5 tonight, what in your estimation is the drawback in waiting for next time? And Joseph, you did say the technicality with legal is really up to us.
Yeah,
Can you explain that again?
It's justified. Since you were a member of the subcommittee and in virtue of you,
Would you like me to read it? I actually have it in front of me.
No, it's fine, because I read it to Hub. What I'm saying is, he said in virtue of you being on the subcommittee, since you agreed for it to be uploaded, whether your name is on the uploaded document or not, whether it's this is legitimate, because we formed a subcommittee in the capacity that you were literally working on it, and you are a member of the prevailing side that voted it down. So with that consent, it is legitimate. But let's do this. Did Dr. Velez answer your question?
No, Dr. Velez, how would you like to weigh in?
So, I mean, we've addressed this before. The drawback in waiting is getting materials in time for students at the beginning of the year. We know we have an 8-week mark to meet Williams, so it just depends on when the publishing company, if it is decided and board approved, what the curriculum will be, it's getting it in time. There's one thing I would like to add. Just to clarify a point that you said, Dr. Komrosky, is this was requested by both Ms. Wiersma and Ms. Barclay to put this on the agenda. It was requested by both of them to do so. I do want to clarify that if we are looking at putting together another subcommittee, that the subcommittee that I believe Mr. Gonzalez, we talked about at the last board meeting, is about board policy, parental involvement, and kind of streamlining that process so we have more parental involvement. And so we look at 2 very separate subcommittees because we don't want to cross over any Brown Act issues, to keep those completely separate. So I just want to clarify that point. If we're going to move forward with that subcommittee, which I think I already emailed you about, we'll get that ball rolling. I just want to be very clear about them being very two distinct purposes.
They are, but I feel like there's, I'll use the technical term, mutual epistemic convergence. That means two subcommittees are converging on one point where information regarding Ed Code 62, or what's the Ed Code 60002? And with them specifically focusing, both of those interlap. One is parental involvement on this in general, and then the other one is the specific
Right.
content of the material. They both overlap with an intersecting point as, hey, did we do this right in the first place?
Right, and that does affect, you know, the agenda item that we're discussing, but to not violate any Brown Act issues,
Totally.
we're keeping those two subcommittees completely focused on
Right.
separate issues.
Right.
So they were looking at the committee along with a panel of teachers and discussing any of the concerns and maybe supplementing that. What you and I are gonna look into is the actual administrative regulation that is the guiding principle for how we do curriculum
Right.
adoptions across.
So we won't overlap information amongst us to avoid the Brown Act, but on the dais, we'll share the information publicly.
Correct, and in open session, that's completely appropriate.
Yep.
So I know that our district directors are ready to meet to go through that subcommittee with you as well, so we can get that organized. Have you determined consensus? I would just like to offer too, you could hear the information tonight and then, you know, continue to not make a motion on it or make any decision on it. It's up to you, or you could postpone it to the next meeting.
So my thought was we have two separate items on here, and one of them is specifically excuse me, what is it? The elementary social science curriculum. But on the title sheet, it does say that we're discussing both for the Social Studies Alive for grades 1 through 5 and California Studies Weekly for grade kindergarten. So I would like to hear what the committee came up with and digest that information, have the opportunity to potentially send an email to either yourself or Ms. Parla if I still have some unanswered questions that wouldn't be violating the Brown Act but would help in my decision-making. And then obviously, I think once we meet one time, I understand we already have a draft, there's already been movement on this. I think we're really close. So I'd rather not open this up to another round of, you know, potential fire. I think we're really close, so.
Okay, after Mr. Schwartz, we have a motion.
I
and a
just
second
want
on
to
the
call
floor.
the question on whether or not to pull it from the agenda.
Well, we have a motion on the floor already. We have a motion and a second, so we have to vote on that first.
Okay.
Okay, all in favor to suspend, that's the motion. Say aye.
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 That's, all against, say nay.
Nay.
Nay. Why?
I don't
I
understand.
guess I don't know why we have a
If you voted
subcommittee.
to approve it, why are you voting no now? It doesn't make sense. I don't get it. It's not a question for you, it's for Mrs. Wiersma. She voted to approve it, and now she's voting no. I don't understand.
Okay,
But
well,
let's move on.
I think
Item-
what we
item
decided
two
was
is
to
removed.
table it.
Let's move on,
So-
please. Thank you.
I have a couple of items, a couple of questions about the agenda as well. One question is, we have the contract for Dr. Velez on the agenda, and I'm wondering why the other assistant superintendent contracts were pulled from the agenda.
I requested that so we could have time to review them. And when I say we, me and Mrs. Wiersma, as the executive committee, when we were approving the agenda, and none of those contracts expire. So we are well within our limits, and those will be put on July 18th.
Well, they do turn over July 1st, and there's no reason that they can't be renewed because they all had a positive evaluation, and that's the stipulation in the contract.
Yeah, that's what we
That
heard.
they have to be approved because they received a positive evaluation.
That's what we heard as well, but I'd like time to review them, and that's been granted, so that's why it's
Well,
going on.
I mean, I'm just curious if you understand the ramifications of that on people.
Yeah, I do. In fact, two of their contracts, they don't expire till 2024, and the other two don't expire till 2025. Believe me, there is no expiration on their contract.
But I'm just wondering if you understand how that makes people feel in already a volatile situation, and then last minute to literally pull their contracts from approval, which is very out of the norm. Usually they're all done at the same time. traditionally before July 1, but always very close to July 1 because that's the beginning of the fiscal year.
Can I,
And I'm just curious why we would do
can I
that
have
to
a point of
people.
order? I mean, we're discussing items that are on the agenda. This is not on the agenda. Why are we even discussing it?
I'm wondering why it's not on the
But
agenda.
it's not on the agenda, so why are we discussing it?
That is a
Because it
correct.
was
I
on
have
the
no
agenda and
idea
it should
what
have
you're
been on
even
the
talking
agenda.
about,
Yeah.
so
You know
we're
what,
discussing something that hasn't even come before the board, so why are we discussing something that's not
Because
on the
it was
agenda?
pulled from the agenda.
No,
Did you
know,
request that
Mr.
it be put on the
Gonzalez is
agenda?
right.
There's nothing,
was on the
there's nothing to
agenda.
Mrs.
discuss
Barclay,
here.
Mr.
There's no-
Gonzalez is right on the
There's
point
nothing
of
we can
order.
do at this point. It wasn't on the agenda. We can't say we're gonna put it back on and.
Of course
and-
we can.
We
We
can't.
can
We
put
haven't given,
anything on the agenda we want.
we haven't given
Or
notice.
take anything off that we want.
we haven't given 72 hours notice to do so. We have not done that. It's not on the agenda. There's nothing we can do sitting here at this point other than argue and bicker about something that
Yeah, well,
is
there's a lot of
meaningless.
arguing and bickering
I,
going on,
I
that's
don't
for
know
sure.
why it was pulled, Mr. Schwartz, and I have nothing to do
Well,
with it. I
let's
have
find
no
out why
opinion.
it
That's
All
what I
right,
was
all right.
asking.
It's not
You
on
know
the
what,
agenda.
let's come to order. We're gonna
There's
move
nothing
on.
to discuss.
And
I
that's
want-
what I was asking. Well,
want
let me
to-
finish to my next point then, please.
Okay.
On the agenda.
Yeah.
I would like to pull consent 21.
I was just gonna say, I'm gonna pull 21 and 34, and I'm gonna speak to 21,
Okay.
since it's up a little bit, so yeah, absolutely. Any other
As a,
items?
just as a point of clarification, you're pulling 21, Dr. Komorowski, on what number?
34.
Okay, and just to reiterate what you said, Dr. Komorowski, I want to make sure that Ms. Anna Sebar hears this. On July 18th, at our next board meeting, the assistant superintendent's contracts will be added to that agenda?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Would you
Any
mind
other items
repeating,
that you
would
wanna
you
have
mind
pulled?
repeating the items that got pulled for me?
21 and 34, I'm pulling those because I'm gonna speak to them.
Thank you. And 2 is, oh, this is from consent.
Yeah, consent.
Are we pulling items to discuss from consent now?
Yeah, just so we can
I'd like to
get the
pull
minutes.
27.
Okay,
We're doing that now.
27. Okay, anything else? Ms. Barclay, Mr. Schwartz, Ms. Wuersma? Okay, so do we approve, do we have a motion, a second to approve the the agenda absent action item 2 that we've pushed off to the next meeting?
Move.
Do I have a motion, a second? It's moved by Mr. Gonzalez. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mrs. Wuersma. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. All against, say nay.
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 Yeah, okay, motion adopted 3-2 to approve the agenda. Announcement of closed session items. In accordance with the Government Code Section 54957.7, the board will meet in closed session for consideration of items listed in Section E. At this time, we have no public comments, correct? Okay, so my